I hope you had a nice lunch. Was it a nice lunch?
Yes.
We are now at a stage whereby we are going to wrap up our commissions so that the scriber will be able to capture the most salient points that have emerged in our deliberations. If there are any issues that we feel needs to be explored further, this 20-minute is meant for that. We have the two presenters. Unfortunately, Abandu had to go back to Grahamstown Arts Festival. He's performing this evening. So he extended his apology. So what it means, actually, we will interact with the two presentations, but it will be a collective discussion which will assist us in summarizing the discussions we had. Now, can I get an indication from the floor which issues that you feel strongly that needs to be further explored or needs at least some further discussions? I've noted one hand. Let me take three. I've noted one. Can we have two more? Or people are still, reflecting? Let's allow you guys to reflect. Okay, go for it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mine is simple. The Hakim mentioned thing of community mobilization. That's another thing that is very vital, but I didn't go in deeper in that one. Whereby we don't just talk, we practicalize this idea, because most of the time we just talk. For example, there are a lot of NGOs, co-ops, and all that. So those are the agents of change. So I would like us to explore that one in detail. So how can we as artists can mobilize one another and do practical things and work collectively in addressing our own challenges as artists?
This does not necessarily mean questions are confined to the presenters. Whoever from the floor who feels strongly that wants to make a quick response, feel free to do so.
I'm not sure what I should be capturing what's being talked about now, only because what I was doing is I captured basically a lot of points that were being raised by everyone in the floor. So
capture this
game. What's happening now for the presentation, or are we going to take it from what I captured from the presentation?
What we're doing is just to recap. By so doing, we are summarizing the discussions. If you feel strongly that the points that are going to be raised have already been captured, just don't capture them. As long as the discussions are a true reflection of what was discussed in the room and is ready to be reported when the other commissions reconverge in the same venue. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I love using a mic when I perform, but like on any other scenario, I'd rather speak with my own voice. Community mobilization. What we did in 2002, we formed Ghetto Youth Uprising. Ghetto Youth Uprising was formed by brothers who were in love with hip-hop, but were concerned by the state of the society. So what we did, we came together. We had wished for more art forms to come in, but because it was formed by people who were hip-hop orientated, people took it as a hip-hop group. So what we did at that time, we formed alliances with other social organizations, such as Okusingqongileyo, which was an organization that was concerned with what we will call tourism in Motherwell, safer and cleaner Motherwell. So we embarked on campaigns where we will deal with certain schools. We take that school, clean the area that's around that school with the students, and after that have a show where some of our members will perform and some of them will have presentations. We've worked with institutions of higher learning. There was spoken word art movement in it was in Vista then. We worked with them. Whenever they had programs, we would come and have an input on it. And what else? There was Jubilee 2000, which was an organization that was standing, like they were asking, why should the present government continue paying the debt that was made by an institution that was dubbed a crime against humanity? Why do we continue paying that? In 2010, we have collaborated with Kulumani Support Group as Heavenly Approved Productions. We have designed the cover, and we've done a protest a CD that had artists from all over the globe. You had Ghanaians there, you had brothers from the Americas, you had brothers from the UK. What basically this was putting forth was that you have these companies that were in support of apartheid, but after 94, it is as if they never collaborated. They aided the social system with guns to carry forth the genocide of the people. So as an artist, we should not wait for somebody to come and do things for us. We identify, they say real recognize real, or the birds of the same feather flock together. So we need to identify one another beyond our races, beyond our cultural practices, and take that which we have in common and come together and try to build more on this that we have as a common trend that will aid not only us but aid the society and the community. Other than that, we will be failing.
Can we then have, by indication of hand, another input, question, comment? It seems as if after lunch, energy levels are very low. Can we have one?
I can just make an input. I'm a spoken artist, and what we've recently done in Bloemfontein, we formed a cultural collective, meaning we brought together poetry, dance, music, theatre, everything together. And then also we go out to the community. For example, we have 48 juvenile kids, and we do literacy development. And in the collective also, with our youngsters, 2 of our youngsters here, we also exchange other kinds of skills in the collective. But also, we also allow them to create their own economic development. For example, he has just opened his own dance school, where we have people who then sponsor less privileged kids in our community who are using drugs or alcohol to get them out of those communities into his school, where he can train them. So we don't only bring one kind of art together, but we bring all genres together to, for example, advance our community and the artists in the collective as well.
That's powerful. Okay, I'd like to say being an artist, it means you are an unlimited, an infinite creative force. You are powerful beyond your imagination. You shouldn't box yourself and wait for somebody to stand for your cause. You are the artist. You are moved by something to stand up. The last time I was here, I was fortunate to attend a launch, which is, I'm still beefing with them because they haven't done anything after that. And on the launch, their mandate was not clear as to what is it. But I understand they are a youth who had no privilege to see these things being done in front of their eyes. There's a community called Resonance Poetry, which I feel beyond them coming together within this institution to recite poetry, they can come together, read books, and critique that book, get an understanding. Because I might be speaking now to all of you, but the understanding thereof that you're going to get from what I am saying is going to differ based on your religion, based on your culture, based on your experiences and everything else, So those kind of community mobilization and us coming together as artists, they can happen in small and insignificant, in our perception, spaces. So we shouldn't limit a place where art could occur and this space art cannot occur. You see, because at the moment I've been trying to find a venue to do a workshop, and it dawned yesterday I have a house. I'll do it in my yard, because I've knocked to all these doors, and no one is willing to give me venue, but I pass venues that are closed. So I'll do it in my house. I'll call people and then we will do it, and then we talk about progress. So that is what is important. We need to open up spaces so that we can talk. We shouldn't stay on.
Yeah. It seems to me that artists are ready to share some of their artworks if ever there is no other point that you strongly feel needs to be expressed, because we have then our presentation which is ready to be presented. I am of that impression. I'm getting a nod, which is life-giving, Then, which means we can take the few remainder of the minutes of the few remaining time, exhibit our cultural art forms. We are artists. At the end, we do less talking and much exhibition.
But I think he wanted to make a point.
There is a point, though.
Okay, I was just going to put an emphasis on what Mr. Akim has already said in the beginning of the lecture, that when he was talking about hip-hop, I'm not sure if you captured that hip-hop is more... Okay, hip-hop is more than just a genre, as we have seen on television or in the media, how they portray hip-hop to be a genre, but it's actually a subculture with plenty elements, as Mr. Akim has already stated, that there are basically 4 elements, which the first element is knowledge of self, or knowing thyself first. So I'm not sure if you captured it already. Like hip-hop is more than just a genre. It's actually a subculture that represents the people.
I did.
That's cool.
I kept to everything. I was just capturing all the points. I wasn't sifting through.
That's cool, man. Okay, please.
But I think we do concur, all of us, that music in itself, it is a powerful force that influences and determines what becomes popular. Because through one song, a lot of people get to eat. Fashion labels, they get to infiltrate through that one song. Visual artists, they get to eat with one. So with one song, you are able to dictate sort of what would be the agenda, in the meetings of the people. I think that's what basically all of us are agreeing on.
So, which means that if I capture the points, correctly, public spaces are there to be appropriated for the advancement of the cause, which means that you don't wait for people to create spaces. Artists should be agents and create their own spaces. They've got that agency. So we need to create alternative spaces, and not always all the time, complain about lack of media coverage. But alternative spaces need to be created by artists in order to advance revolutionary cause. There is a saying that ruling class in any epoch dictate or dominate what becomes the agenda of the day. So if artists don't protect their own agendas by creating platforms that are meant for such engagements and agendas, then it means that the cause, the revolutionary cause that artists seek to advance would not reach the goal that is meant. So can we have indication group of artists who wish to share their art forms with us? Just one rendition of your item so that others would share the platform as well. I get an indication of the people have been ready?
Yes, we have two of them, and we're just waiting for the drummer and the guitarist. They just went to fetch their stuff in the car.
Once they are still getting ready, can we have spoken word indication? Oh, good.
I'll wait for the drummer too, because I was
Waiting for the drum. Okay. You see the connections now. We see the linkages now.
Remember, we used to use the bus shelter to advance the cause.
Okay. Good afternoon.
A viable platform.
Am I working?
Switch it on. Switch it on.
At the bottom, son. At the bottom. All right.
Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay.
Switch it on.
1, 2. Okay.
Yeah, better go back.
Okay. Yeah, ne? Just gonna do a simple chord. Yeah, it's called The Wrong Avenue. The Wrong Avenue. Walking down this unknown avenue. Walking down this unknown avenue. Chest is protruding, I am boasting. Greet the meeting. Greet legal official malefactors, grinning with malice and desire to harass and arrest me for not abiding by the road laws. Restriction boards ignore, they are frisking me for flaws. I strut tall like a defiant giant, breaking everything I see with my own two eyes. Positivity is minute like cashews. It doesn't pay me when tearing down posters potentially detrimental to Manana with their catchy slogans that read, same day, pain-free, evoking envy like who ditchy sees what some are better. Some got the balls to get kids tossed like balls. This must be the wrong street. Transition of my mood from grey to odd. There is no good or God when the strident sounds of the gun speak. This is normal. No one is guilty of breaching of the peace. I am not supposed to be walking down here, but I do not have a choice but to dare now, singing Piganini, scrounging, scavenging beings. It hurts my being like putting my feet in the shoes of a has-been. It causes chagrin I came here to redeem my brother and my sister because the plight of blacks in this chock-a-block slum is a sticky mucus, unhealed apartheid wounds oozing disgusting pus like toxins excreting from an infected uterus. I've never seen such inexplicable pain in my whole life. Every screech of the sons and daughters is a painful pinch. You have no idea what it's like, but there's a hidden meaning behind every single cry. I decipher these loud cries of pain to narrate a story like my life today, a once beautiful flower with petals that withered away, a breath taken away, absence of sunshine throughout the days, cruelly cold nights of agony and pricking memories of violence. I've been walking through the lives of these individuals to break their silence. I am a savior with a haloed countenance, but bad spirits hover over my siblings, a persuasive whisper to the gullible ears of the negative consciousness holding a gun. I'm like, if you're gonna play the villain like Gargamel, then expect to be smeared with the blame like Azazel. But you are oblivious like the sleeping gypsy on the roadside. You cannot see the dangers I speak of because eyes are covered in thick mist of deliberate ignorance. Arrogance is a cataract. I stand at the corner of this unknown avenue, screaming for assistance while shooting question marks like arrows. How many isms do we need to achieve serious change? The path to the finishing line is enclosed with nervousness, but I am a camel, storing water for my journey like cactuses. Along the road I see sex is cheap like slaves sold for a bargain. All you need is a thick wallet and your ostentatious presence in a discotheque of a tavern. And people are coming here because flesh desires are common here. And this is not a place for love, moral. We're in the wrong place, searching for the golden plates of Mormon. And desire is a leaky container that never gets filled, is what they say when posing intellectual questions, walking and talking with dizzy bodies arm to arm. Confused and intertwined lives like the lines I see when I look at my palms. I've been walking and hoping this is not the wrong path. My feet and hands are sore, drained and weary from the burdens and yokes that I carry and some other stuff that I stand for, but you are not the man in Islam. As long as you grasp the conundrums, no need to respect the values, no need to observe no need to observe.
Yes.
But you are not the man in Islam. As long as you grasp the conundrums, no need to respect the values, no need to observe the curfews like you observe your mom's curfews. The public denies your manhood like we never got drunk of strong punch, beers and brandy. Your manhood is on crutches, child. You are the societal outcast like pariahs driven away to die like Steve at the back of the Black Mariah. I am getting carried away. And this is the modern day Black Mariah. The people I've come to redeem have joined forces with the enemy to attack me helplessly, but the spirit does not die. I am not timid like the ones who do not try. I walk this broken, higgledy, piggledy avenue, wearing wisdom like amulets, combined into one. The good sense of Solomon and of the three Magi. Every word I utter symbolizes life like the cracks on Santa. And this is for the black child awaiting Santa Claus. But Saint Nicholas is dead. Hope is not going to get your stomach fed. This is for the black obedient beggars of bread. The master spoke, so get off your knees and dance for bread like a slave with a price tag on his forehead. Then sing with a shiver at the strident tone of the master's voice while we spend numberless hours and efforts at poetry sessions, spouting black power with intricate poems that keep the listeners guessing. Resting on the cozy couch of uncertainties, I am traveling on this wrong road where chickabiddies roam alone like the papas are gone, the corners of these to pray and circle street corners where magnates swagger around with a speak and span conscious. I have been walking with monsters in this place who prey on their daughters for a gratifying taste. Yes. And I have reached a dead end. I have reached a dead end. This is not a place for love or family unions. Do not follow my footsteps with intent to savage me and the rest. I'm on the road to ruin. And this is a handyard with cacophonous realities that cause hurt like the lyrics of Filthy McNasty. I've met many mystery cats here like my cavity. Never met a single person who's bad habit free. On the path, in attempts to wear Shangri-La, I meet folks who sell hope and figments of imagination and close into books like Hilton and his lost horizon, widening my horizon of experimental knowledge. This is the junction where decisions collide. Either you pick a dream or you pick pockets. Either you stay and wait for Godot or pick yourself up and find the purpose you can easily follow, but it's difficult to rely upon individuals. I've spoken to fake fellows who pretend to represent just to have a seat at an eat-first round table where political gluttons meet and speak about self-enrichment and their plans to maintain the riches through the impoverishment of the impotent. Your voice and your choice are the impetus driving these forces to unite and get rich from the first bite. And this is the wrong avenue. Black folks in a hullabaloo, fighting for breadcrumbs and a space to sleep in a place that resembles a loo.
I didn't have much time to memorize it, so I'll be reading from the page. By the way, my name is Azol. I'm part of the poetry movement that's on here at NAU.
Yeah.
What's the name, man? Get it?
Resonance Poetry Movement. Thank you. I am a bastard, obviously conceived out of wedlock, born and raised by a teenage single mother in the projects. I am the kid with growth problems, diminutive body structure but too great the mind's intellect. Black pigmentation defines not only who I am, but is proof of this. But is proof. Sorry, can I start over? I am a bastard, obviously conceived out of wedlock, born and raised by a teenage single mother in the projects. I am the kid with growth problems, diminutive body structure but too great the mind's intellect. Black pigmentation defines not only who I am, but is proof of being the son of the soil who speaks in a Zani dialect. I point and direct like a pistol, my words with infinite deflects. In fact, I pump facts like an AK-47 through lies, historical omissions, and another white man's dance. For instance, the colonization of all our six senses, the misconceptions brought by evolution that we come from barbaric ancestral creatures, the lies we are told by our own history teachers, the ridicule of our Nguni cultures by these missionary preachers. Hence why you will find me gallivanting into libraries with other truth seekers. The aim is to deviate from the norm of misinforming, but to be counted among the few truth speakers. I am one the conqueror failed to conquer. I shall shout at the peak of my voice of what Spain owes to Morocco. The same goes for Rome and Greece and what is due to ancient Egypt. Oh, and by the way, peace be upon my Nigerian brethren, who speaks confidently in his pidgin English. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. I am reporting for Commission 1. I know the law of the land says ladies first, but we have to do it first because we have to take our colleague to the passage. We're going back shortly. We were looking at music, arts, and popular culture as instruments for revolutionary struggle, limitations and possibilities. Just one other point before I get into the report. Because we are a creative bunch, as soon as I'm done with the report, we're going to have just one or two demonstrations of the kind of things that we were engaging with, and I think you will find it quite enjoyable. So please look forward for that. So basically, we had three presenters. The first one is Yakim Ben Israel. He was presenting on hip hop. So basically, the premise was that we are starting from a position of trying to unpack what hip hop is, because a lot of us, myself included, was not really aware that within hip hop itself there's various other elements that actually come to the fore. And perhaps the most important point is that hip hop, from our deliberations, it's a powerful subculture which has one particular artist, KRS-One, actually went as far as to the United Nations to lobby for it to be recognized as one of the important vehicles for the expression of African American culture. So that is why it has been and is so popular. So I'm just going to go to the elements that came up as presented by Yakim. There's about 5 of them. I'm just going to give you a rundown of the 5. The first one is it's about knowledge of the self, and I think that's self-explanatory. It's about knowledge of the self. 2, within hip hop also there is what is called MCing, where you get MCs. Yakim would best demonstrate that. But yeah, if you have questions, again, you will be free to ask our presenters because they are still here. The third one is beatboxing. The fourth one is graffiti. The fifth one is breakdancing. So those 5 elements that I've just mentioned, they all fall within the ambit of hip hop. So hip hop is not just what we see on TV. It's actually all those 5 elements, and in many cases you find either 3 of them or 4 of them or all 5 together. So that's a bit of knowledge there for those of us who were not really aware. And then we moved on. We basically then went to get some examples of some of the proponents of hip hop, the ones that really put it forward as an important element of cultural expression. And one of the examples that came through is a guy called Stickman, Sticman. And Stickman was part of a group called Dead Prez. you are more than welcome to go on YouTube and check him out and check out what the kind of work that he was doing and the kind of work that he's doing now. But one of the songs that was quite popular, that popularized him, that really put him up, to the fore, was a song called "Let's Get Free." And as it says, I mean, obviously it's got elements again of liberation, elements of trying to move from one element of maybe oppression to an element of actually being free. So thirdly, there's if again on Stigman, there's I don't know whether this is a song or what, but I just say pain is temporary. I think it's
it's more like an interlude, but when you get there, it has a very encouraging message within it.
Yes, and you can also find that on the internet. Yeah, you'll be quite amazed at what it's actually about. And so I think with Yakim, he ended up basically by giving us examples, concrete examples of why hip hop is important, and especially regarding the question that we're trying to answer in revolutionary struggles. And he gave an example of an incident that happened here in the Eastern Cape, actually, of a man called Gijima, and a massacre that actually happened here, which when he asked us, I mean, none of us were aware of it, but it's something that actually happened. So it again highlighted the issue that the history, our history, black history, there's many things that are omitted that we're not aware of and that are not in the history books, but it is part of how we must challenge the education that we get, actually. And Stickman and some of his colleagues actually were challenging that, to say at the end of the day you need to question. You must not just think that because you're learning about history, about European and American history, you must actually learn about your own history first. So that basically, I think that pretty much captured what he was talking about. And so as I indicated later on, you'll be able to see one or two of those elements that I mentioned from some of our group members here. And then we had a second presentation by Ras Mabandla, and his presentation was on reggae. He himself is a Rastafarian. So his name is Ras Mabandla, but his stage name is Neger's Eye, which means, what does it mean, Tessa?
King.
It means King Eye. Yeah, so he's also still with us, so he will be welcome to his engagement. But he was tracing the emergence of reggae music to the time of slavery. That during that time, slaves used to communicate using drums, djembes, and how they would communicate that they didn't want the slave masters to get wind of maybe plans of escaping or plans of rebellion. So it was sort of a code. It was a way of keeping alive the culture. That's because the slaves had been removed from their places of origins, and now they were now trying to keep that alive. And by keeping it alive, they would play drums. They would, so this kind of music emanated from that struggle. And there's also it's interesting because it carries on into the post-slavery period, where again we see reggae playing a very influential element, and I'm sure many of you are aware of the biggest proponents of reggae like Bob Marley, and how he himself would sing about the struggles that were occurring during apartheid in South Africa, and also during Ian Smith's regime in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. So that alone actually captured how reggae, through one particular artist, was responsible for bringing to the fore some of the evils of apartheid and also of the illegitimate government of Ian Smith in Rhodesia. There were a couple of examples that came through of South African artists that were also that we all know of, like Kefa Semenya, Letambuli, Dodi Masuka, Miriam Makeba, and that how all these artists came together and how they would go overseas and they would sing about the struggles of black people, and how through that music there was actually action that was taken through the cultural boycotts, through the banning of apartheid South African teams from participating in sports competitions and stuff like that, but it was through the music that would carry that, and through obviously other avenues like the newspapers and all that. But I think the important thing is that because there was a lot of censorship then, it was obviously in the newspapers, if you open, you wouldn't see exactly what's going on, but through the music, the international community was able to actually appreciate what was going on and to take action, and which eventually led to the end of apartheid. I'm just going to go now to the last presentation. I think it was, yes. There's a lot there that I'm just going to skip out, but I think there's one point here that I wouldn't want to miss. There was a point that was raised that the current music and the genres and the kind of music that we have now, the mainstream or popular music, it's almost mass hypnosis, where a lot of the people listen to it, but they don't really understand what they're listening to, and they don't understand what listening to that is doing to them. And I mean, there are many points that were raised about moral decay from the group, how this music is perpetuating a certain lifestyle. If you watch like hip hop now, the kind of lifestyle that are being put there about drugs, cars, women, and all those things that all of us are aware of. But in our deliberations, I think we were able to articulate and to say that there is a difference. There's two sides to this. The kind of what we're talking about, what the presenters were talking about, is the kind of art, the kind of music that actually makes people aware of the challenges that we're facing. And this is the kind of music that you won't hear on the radios, and it won't sell. You will not. These artists will never. I don't want to say they will never be, because I mean it's. But as of now, they have many challenges to break into the mainstream and to be known, because they are basically going against their status quo. And then I think, right, the last one actually was Abantu Plakis. He presented on murals. Yeah, I think it's murals, right? Yeah. Gosh, yeah, this English. So anyway, murals. Okay, you know what I want to say. These are the most. He says they are the most public of art forms, because they are a form of art. I mean, it's like paintings, and these are not literally just paintings, but they existed even in Egyptian times, when the Egyptians used to paint, to commemorate certain events, certain things that were occurring during that time. So they would paint the hieroglyphics that I'm sure many of you are aware of. Those are a form of that murals thing. And then also, even within our local context, the San and the Khoi people also used to do a lot of that. I'm sure many of you have seen, the pictures of the weird-looking animals and people with long arms and legs and stuff like that. But that's also part of it, that you would see that they would depict a battle, where something happened, where some major victory was achieved. Anyway, Abantu went on to talk about what an artist who actually was quite a big proponent of this in America. His name is Aaron Douglas, and Aaron Douglas was basically focusing on what Abantu described as social realism, which I think was a movement that really took off in the 1930s in America, where there was a Great Depression. There were a lot of things that were going on during that time, and they were not being depicted in the arts. And so the artists that started painting murals, they were literally going against the status quo. They were painting things as they were, and not necessarily painting things to be rosy, so to speak. So he showed us a couple of examples of some of the paintings that he had, where you would see maybe workers at a plantation who were actually working, but then behind that painting you would actually see other images which were showing other things. So he was trying, in a sense, to reimagine what life would be like if you were not a slave. So that alone was going was going against the kind of art that was being portrayed then. There were other comments, but I think I probably should leave it there, because, like I said, we do have one or two short presentations that we're going to have, which I think will encapsulate what we just talked about here. If I left out anything, my group members will also just come in and just add on what I left. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Are there questions and answers to this commission?
But also I wanted to ask that, maybe I want to know this, guys, like, why today a lot of hip-hop guys or reggae or music involve a lot of alcoholism and drug abuse? There's a lot of attachment with them. I wanted to ask you directly, why it's also sold in that way? So, and also the third thing, I wanted to ask maybe what kind of music is Simply Dana is doing? Is it a reggae? Is it a hip hop? But I know she's passing the message, and I know that her message are not welcome in any way. And she was just on the TV not long on a debating show, and she was saying that people don't like these real messages. So she is finding difficult to get support, even from people outside. So lastly, what I wanted to ask from the artist, that is, why do I feel that artists that don't want to be now? Like, why do we have problems in the country, either of the government, young people, but why you don't get? I listen to a lot of poems, I listen to a lot of music. There's so much generalization, but I can never link the artist of Nelson Mandela Bay with the problems that are happening in Nelson Mandela Bay. Like, why those messages can't come out? Whereas you will hear Peter Tosh and Bob Marley and others, like they were real, talking about problems, I just wanted to get a clarity then, but otherwise I accept. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Can we have the second question?
Okay. Hello to everyone. I've noticed you haven't mentioned anything about the South African culture, but I'll skip to that. My question is based on hip-hop. You've mentioned that there's two types of hip-hop, but I'll explain it to my understanding. I'll say there's a positive one, there's a negative one. The negative one, the alcohol and drugs. The positive one is the one that is having problems penetrating to the media. I would like to understand what are the barriers, because my understanding of the difference between the two, it's words, isn't it? So the negative one tends to speak more about negative things. I don't know whether I've got the wrong definition, but what is the problem that's preventing the positive one, the positive hip-hop, to penetrate to the media or the markets, television? Thank you.
The third question, I think it was on the side.
Thank you very much. Mine is more or less similar to that one, is to say that what is it that we can do as young people in order to correct the wrongs that we have been identifying, because we do not want to be part and parcel of the problem, but we want to be part and parcel of the solution so that we move forward. So how do we ensure that the music that we have today emulates the music of Marvin Gaye, the Temptations, Machatini, and all those, David McKellar, and then, so I just want us to try and focus on the positives rather than to waste our energy on the negatives, because if we are going to confine ourselves on the negatives, we will never be able to move forward. Or when we move forward, by that time our energies will be exhausted. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Can people who are part of the commission assist in responding? But I'll give over to the presenter.
Okay, I think, Yakin, there's one that I wanted to direct to you for DJing.
Okay. In the elements, you noticed we used beatbox. Beatbox is basically keeping the rhythm. And then the beatbox evolved from the mere creation of musical elements with your mouth to the actual DJing, from the looping of the music, because remember, these people were disadvantaged. They did not have the leisure of, or I don't know what the English word is appropriate for it, but they didn't have money to purchase all the equipment. So what they've done is to keep on breaking and looping and making it a long song so that they can, be able to channel what they were saying. So instead of using the conventional word of DJing, we've used beatbox. On the alcohol, when we're talking alcohol and why is the positive message struggling to penetrate. I think it's the same, it's on the same wavelength because there's the same barrier. You understand there's something called gossip. It spreads much faster than the truth. People will know the wrong things about you than knowing the truth about you. So the same thing when we question why would the positive spread in a snail pace, we should ask why does, gossip or the truth, travel much, slower than the truth. I do not want to speak of alcohol and all of that as something that is confined to hip-hop, because this is something that is, you watch television, they say no under 21s must get into the club, but when you turn on your television screen, all the house videos are done in the club. So instead of going there, you can access the club in the comfort of your own home. What we need to understand, what we need to understand that mass media is advertisement driven. It's all about revenue. There's now you pay to put your advert on, and now there are radio stations, there's what we call payola, where you pay for your song to be aired. Big companies, you will notice when you listen to a radio, maybe after news, every time at one, this radio station plays the same song. You will even think the DJ likes that song. No, the DJ doesn't like that song. It's been paid for. It is being aired as an advert. So we as the artists that carry the message that will feed our people's souls, we struggle because we do not have the money, the necessary resources to go out there. Because the stigma we spoke of has a rehabilitation center. In this rehabilitation center, obviously, he speaks against alcohol abuse and all these things. And the guy that is always ready to sponsor these things is the guy that owns that beer manufacturing and whatnot. So what Stigman is talking about is contrary to what that those specific people are standing for. So that's where the differences are. And the culture of South Africa, we were talking about hip hop. Trust me, the same question emerged when we sat here. The same thing that you've noted, that you have a lot of artists that do not actually tackle issues that are relating to our people. But I challenge any of you to listen to any of the songs that we've done and the things that we're involved in. You will hear yourselves in them, but we don't get space so that you hear us, you understand? So we had to talk about Chapti, we had to talk about Immortal Technique, who used his own money to build an orphanage home after the damage that was done by America in places like Afghanistan. In South Africa, we have rappers of note that are making money out of hip-hop, the AKAs, the Ifanis, the double HPs, and all these other guys. But have you ever seen or heard them talk about things that are uplifting the society or having projects within the society that is uplifting? So then, therefore, in what we are speaking about, the hip-hop or the arts, as a powerful tool to actually dictate what is being spoken about or what is the main agenda. We could not speak about those people because they were irrelevant. So we needed to have examples. And the other thing, when we speak of Africans that are in the diaspora, we shouldn't look at them as Americans. Those are African people, but they were taken against their will to a land that was foreign to them. You understand, the struggle of oppressed people wherever they are in the world is the same struggle. Thank you very much.
Are there any other comments to respond to the questions from that commission? If there are none, then can we then take it that the group has completed the presentation without the other added aspect into it? Because the group felt very strongly that they need to exhibit what it means to advance the revolutionary struggle through music art and dance. But we will leave that for another session, maybe, where artists would be given a platform to exhibit their work. So can we have now Commission 2? Let's give them a round of applause.
Good afternoon. My name is Fundiswa Mthandana. Ndiyabulisa kuni nonke bantu bakuthi. Okay, I'm from the group that was discussing the Commission Youth Leadership and Drug Abuse as opinion. But unfortunately, time in Xhosa we always say ixesha lichaba. Akhange sifumane ixesha enough for ukuthetha more about drugs and abuse and everything. Ba belikhona siyacela ba umhlambi singaphinda siphiwe because sive into ba iyanideka into bana sithethe, especially when we're talking about youth leadership. Okay. The question was, what kind of leaders do we want, or what kind of leaders can we be in order for us youth to become more prominent in our society? And in my group, we said that we need leaders that have respect, first and foremost, I would say. And we need leaders with principle. We also need leaders that are not afraid. We need people or leaders that can engage with people. When we say we need leaders with principle, not afraid, people that can engage, we were saying that we would refer to Dr. Neville. Dr. Neville was a person that had education and he had more stage for him to go up. But instead of him deciding to be part of the capitalist, as other people would say, or people that take and take and take, as others would say, he decided to take what he had and revert back to the community. He decided to plow back to where he was coming from. And despite him facing the challenge of that time where he was being threatened by the authorities and being summoned of not talking too much or not saying other things, he refused to back down because he saw that if he doesn't say anything, if he doesn't plow back to the community, then there's no reason for him to exist, because everyone else, if everyone is going to follow at his step and go forward without looking at the youth and changing the background, then we're all going to die. And I say personally thank you to him, because that's the reason why he is one of the people that enabled the roads for me to come and sit here today and be able to talk and probably speak English the way I speak today. Yeah, in our commission, what we accomplish is that everything has to start back from the primary. We tend to focus more on youth today, saying that the youth starts from teenagehood and upwards. But what we found out when we were discussing this commission, is that we need to focus more on our babies, on our children. Go back to the lower primary schools and teach them what is respect, teach them what is being a human, teach them what is being able to be a leader, how to become a leader. And one of us came up with saying that we need to be able to have a change to be one and try and get a curriculum that will change the way that our youth is becoming. By saying that, we're saying that we need to go back and try and change the way or the situation that is being put there by our government and change it to favor the future of our kids. Meaning, with the curriculum that we have now, we need to change it back to having classes where we say, okay, from this stage, this is this class here. If we have 45 classes in a school, then we say, okay, we will have 10 classes that deal with business, 10 classes that deal mainly with agriculture, 10 classes that deal mainly with social and something else, social whatever. The reason being is that we have kids that don't really want to learn or are not able to learn like the theory. They want to do practical things, and that is founded from the pre-crashes. Is it called pre-crashes?
Great
Preschools or grade hours, yeah. You would find that even the teachers say so, that the kids, you get kids that don't want to study because they can't focus for quite a long time reading and writing. They need to do something practical. And one of my team also said that he was quite shocked to learn about business at standard 6. And when he started opening his eyes, learning about this business thing, it was taken from him because he learned about business from 6, 7, and when he gets to 8 and up, then there's nothing that he can do. It shifts the focus that he had coming from primary to high school, where he actually told himself when he gets to high school, he's going to be this thing, but then the education changed his curriculum mind to something else. So we say that everything has to start back from primary school. And the ethics also. And also to be to have great leaders, we also need to get our kids participate more in sport. Because we have so many different sports besides soccer, besides rugby. We have other like golf, we have dance, we have karate, we have ballroom dance. When we talk about dance, there's so many different kinds of dance. And we have ballets, which teaches one not only to stretch and what, but it also teaches one discipline. And it also teaches you how to have a human posture, how to talk to people, how to address people. So it goes back to being a leader with respect. Yeah, I think that's more of it. We can talk like for more hours. In fact, we were the group that requested 20 minutes extra, and we found that even that 20 minutes is not enough.
Can we then have people from the same commission, Commission 2, to make comments and additions? Or the deliberations of the commission were well captured in her presentation? Let's give them a round of applause once again. Can we then have questions for the commission? I've noted 1 at the back, 2, there's 3. Can we have the questions in that order?
Chair, thank you very much. I am not very sure if I agree with some of the things that have been presented by the Commission. Because, Chair, I think that the Commission, to start with, has not entered the issue that related to drug abuse. I have a very serious interest for that matter. Very, very serious interest. I believe it's a very serious problem that we are having in the country, and we have been dealing with it at the surface level. If I ought to input on that matter, I will, if you allow me, I'll do that. I think that the root of the problem of drug abuse is not the youth wanting to. necessarily, is access of drugs in communities. You know where I come from, in the north of Orange River, there is massive production of a new drug called Hunga, produced out of ARVs. It's called Hunga. It's produced out of ARVs. Now this is the problem. Multinational drug companies of US origin, and if we are to call things by their real names, of US origin, continue to supply governments for pharmaceutical purposes in hospitals and so forth with drugs. That's fine, it's good for the health of our people. But the surplus is the logic of economics. If you produce, you put the surplus in what we call a black budget. Now, pharmaceutical companies create a market in townships and among communities of drugs. Because in any way, there is nobody who is allowed to be in possession of drugs. It's state that is supposed to be in possession of drugs. They're supposed to be kept in hospitals, to be kept for health reasons, to cure diseases and so forth. But pharmaceutical companies dump them. And what do? We go and say that the people of Cape Flats love drugs. As if the pharmaceutical companies have not developed the market for drug abuse in that area. Now if we want to deal with the problem, we must stop blaming the youth. We must go to Pfizer and say to Pfizer, if you are going to bring these kilograms of drugs in the country, that is exactly what we want. We do not want to see any cocaine produced by you on the street. Otherwise, we find a way of dealing with you, terminate your contract with the state or so forth. Now, on the question of leadership,
let's summarize it without sounding interject. Let's be brief and not have a long, winded comment, so that others can have a chance to contribute as well.
Thank you very much.
I'm allowing you a platform now to quickly make your point very brief. Okay.
I finished on the matter of drugs. Brief is problems of dumping of surplus produce by multinational companies. And I suppose that on questions of leadership, I have a lot of misgivings on some of the issues, but I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you for such a comment. Can we have the second question?
All right. Mine is to say that I've heard the group presenting, and it seems like they've talked more on leadership and less on how drug abuse becomes an opium for the masses. And I think that is the one thing that the group should have focused on, because that phrase, like having drug abuse as an opium for the masses, my understanding is that anything that is an opium or that becomes an opium, it's something that takes away your thinking, it takes away your critical consciousness, it takes away your critical thinking. And if we are gathered here as the youth, I think the group then should have told us what leadership is, as you have done, which is correct, and then tell us how this leadership can take us away from that slumbering, from the state of sleeping. How can now the leadership be used transformatively in order to wake us up from the sleep that we are in? And also, how can drugs, how can we protest against drug abuse so that we retain our critical consciousness, or we regain the critical consciousness? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Can we have the last one, so that the Commission can be given a platform to respond?
Thanks. Charles. I'm not sure whether I'm covered by the presentation or by the Commission, because according to me, it's very critical, this topic that they were dealing with in relation to the challenges faced by young people. I would have thought that maybe they will go further and explain in more details as a commission as to how they see and how they define leadership as that commission, and able to convey this message for us, all of us, to define and explain and debate. But I've just listened to a few more generalization about what leadership and what is a leader must look like, which I'm a bit disappointed me, I must say. And the question that I have in that disappointment, that how do you mold, build a leadership within young person who's here in the midst of challenges that this very same young person is faced with? That's one. Two, no, let me stop there, Chair. Thanks, man.
Okay. Sorry, can I ask you to repeat that question again?
No, I'm saying I'm a bit disappointed.
Yeah, no, I wonder how do you mold?
How do you say to us as a commission, we must be exemplar as young people to society, given the challenge that we are faced with within the society in which we say we must be exemplar and lead? I think I'm clear. Thanks.
Well captured, thanks. Now we're giving over to the presenter and the rest of the commission to make a response. Remember, the questions are not directed to her, she's part of the entire group. So the commission should feel free to capture the questions.
Okay, I would say, my colleagues, you're welcome to help, but can I start? Okay, with the first question, the what's your name?
It was based on the drug abuse.
I want a name. Kolisa. Oh, Kolisa. Yeah. Kolisa asked how do we get waking up from this sleeping that we have. I would say that it is when we were discussing, we didn't, as I said earlier on, we didn't really get a platform or time to discuss the drug abuse issue. We were dwelling more on the leadership. The leadership and drug abuse commission, it is quite a vast commission. It doesn't need an hour, it doesn't need 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, it needs more time. Because when we were discussing this commission, we started by analyzing the problems, and you can't just jump into the solutions without analyzing the problems. And on problems only, I promise you, we spent about 45 minutes discussing problems that were economics, that we have the social challenges that we face, the productivity and the reproductivity that we are facing and having. And through all of those things, we found that if we, the youth of today, are going to complain that we don't have this, we don't have that, we are oppressed, we don't have a stage to talk, we can't voice out our opinions, then we are always going to be where we are, or we're gonna die complaining. We have people like the likes of Tata Mandela, we have Otadu Sisulu, Otadu Thabo Mbeki, or Gavin Mbeki, we have Dr. Neville, that were in a worse situation than us. They had to meet behind closed doors. They had to talk behind, underneath carpets and sheets and everything. No one had to hear what they were saying. But we, the youth of today, had a platform to talk today. We can raise our voices as much as we want, and we, the youth of today, have more equipment than anyone else. That's what we say. So if we're gonna say that we are sleeping because the sun is not out, then we're always gonna sleep. Because we have people that were there that were not sleeping. They were fighting for us to be here. They fought day and night. Okay. So what we coming back on your question, how are we going to be awakened? The only way is to be educated. Going back to the roots, one of my colleagues actually said that we need to go back to political education. We need to go back to the roots of who we are, understanding our history, where we're coming from, and take it from there. I hope I've answered.
Sesithetha malunga nento zinkokheli zolutsha ubandakanya nento zokusetshenziswa kweziyobisi. Njengokuba ebesecacisile kuqala, khange silifumane ithuba eloneleyo ukuthi singene kwisizekabani ngokusetshenziswa kweziyobisi. So leyo indawo xawam ndizakhawuleza ndinyathele kule mibuzo mibini ebivelile. Sithe thina xa sihleli simcommission 2 sibonisana ngazo zonke izinto, safikelela kwinto ethi njengokuba singenalo ithuba elaneleyo ukuthi sixove lo mba wokusetyenziswa kwe-drugs, ndiye ndazivolontiya kuloo nto ndathi ndizawuphendula kumbuzo ozothuze apha ngokwegroup lena yethu. Okokuqala, sithe xa siphawula safumanise okokuba abantu ababaleka bayosebenzisa iziyobisi ngendlela engafanelekanga ngabantu abafilishe kuqala kwi-step esi se-youth leadership. Umntu umthathile wamkhulisa, wamfaka esikolweni, wafika esikolweni le nto ebeyijongile okanye ebeyi-expectile ayahamba ngalaa ndlela, azixelele uba uzawubaleka apha ecaleni asebenzise i-drugs. I believe uba njengokubana sisonke siyayazi ukuthi i-drug yintoni yodwa. I-drug is a substance that is used most ngabantu abanengxaki okanye abakuxinezeleleko lwento. Athi umntu xa isebenzisile le substance azixelele okokubana le ngxaki yakhe ingathi iyawugxotheka ngokusetyenziswa iziyobisi. Ndifuna ukhawulelana nogxa wam kuba imibuzo ebendiyibona ebingamandla okanye iimbono ebezivezwa bezimayelana nokusetyenziswa kweziyobisi. Siyaxolisa uba singekhange sibe nethuba enough singene kuloo nto besizawuxoxa.
I think the conference has taken note of the pleas that you really apologize because time was limited. Can we have one person who will respond to the last question?
Sorry, can you...
How do we overcome the challenges?
Okay, I will just chip in there. Ours is to say that, first and foremost, let me start with the idiom that says, forever begging, forever hungry, which means it's dependency syndrome. It simply also says that we need to teach someone how to fish so that we are able to create an independent mind. We value education as a group, and we say that only if people are capacitated, that is how you are able to move away from this challenge that we have identified. And we are also saying that if we do not capacitate ourselves whilst there's still time, surely we will regret in the future, because the opportunist will take full advantage of the prevailing circumstances. And we are also saying, as we're saying that we are valuing education, I want to also quote from Victor Hugo, says, I quote, that she who opens the doors of education closes a prison. So to us, education is not a preparation for life, but it is life itself. And its main purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open one. So we are saying to all educators, they have to realize that what they are doing, they affect eternity, because they will never tell where the influence will stop. So it is very important for all of us to understand the value of education. So if you are able to educate people, you will be able to emancipate them from the mental slavery. That's where it all starts. Hence there's a word integration. You start by thinking, and then you say it, and then you do it. That is what is the meaning of integration. Umdibaniso wezinto elicingiwe elithethiwe yade yenziwa.
Oh, okay. Adding on. Oh, one of my colleagues also has something to say.
Yes, the Commission can feel free to respond.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. Look, the Commission fell very short of what was expected, and it's something that the group knows. It's because of reasons that will take the entire day if we had to explain why. I mean, on technicalities, we could have done better, but it went haywire. But what I picked up from the group, from my observation, was how the entire group understood the importance of leadership, and it's not just about sitting here in these beautiful chambers and sounding more eloquent than the other one. There's that disconnect in South Africa when it comes to leadership and the people that we lead. Leadership has become about being in these structures which at times are politically motivated, and you sit in such councils and you make certain policies, and you never actually meet up with the people that you're serving on the ground. So for us as a country, for us as a nation, to be able to move forward and be able to serve Africa at large, we have to bridge that gap between the people that we serve and us ourselves as leaders. As a leader, you don't live in an ivory tower and say, hey, I'm a leader, I'm a chairperson, I was voted unanimously by the majority of the people, and therefore I am above the people. So hence we emphasized on linking our education development and empowerment with education, because we believe that when we promote education and we link it up with leadership development, we are able to kill two birds with one stone, because we want these kids to be educated, and at the same time we want to raise selfless leaders who are going to remind us of who and what Neville Alexander is, and they're going to take after that. The reason why we emphasize on Elia's primary education is because one of our speakers mentioned something like they have leadership development programs that they run in high schools. It goes such that they've got university students that they are mentoring, who end up mentoring high school students, who end up mentoring higher primary students, who end up mentoring primary students, who end up going to those preschools. So now you've got that cycle that's going on of leadership development in their community. And the thing that also stood out for us was how the black people are yet to go back and develop their own communities. One speaker asked people to raise their hands and to count how many people actually went to black schools, that is Gokas, Elokshing, Bafundu 8 Bakamasel. And more than 10 people raised their hands, and then when the same person asked, can we get people to raise their hands of those who've gone back to those same schools to plow back anything? Be it you buy a soccer ball or you help tutor a maths class, only one person raised up their hand. You see, you cannot separate service and leadership development. We can sit here and go on and argue about ideologies, this must go this way, this must go that way, until we put practicality into what we are saying, then we're playing around with water. If we're going to develop ourselves, and if we're going to demand certain things from government, from private sector, from civil society, black people must go back to their black communities and develop their communities. Help the school start a reading club. Help the school by donating a computer. Do something. Because those kids see Sis Nangamso who went to the same schools that they are attending. But Sis Nangamso studied very hard, got a scholarship, went to varsity, runs her own company. If she can have time to come and lecture me or tutor me in maths, I'm going to be there. Thank you.
There's another hand.
Okay, I think we maybe might need to have 2 or 3 minutes just to explain our departure in our core mission. With all the activities that we basically had before we can get into the actual discussion, basically was based on some of the notes that Gramsci did whilst he was still in prison, because we felt that it's very important that we understand where we come from in order to be able to discuss the actual context that we are in order to pave the way forward. And based on that, we use that dynamic model, which basically gives us an understanding and a broader picture. Why do we find ourselves as young people in a situation whereby we are making use of alcohol, in fact abusing alcohol and or drugs? But also the question is also looking in terms of what kind of leadership do we want to build out of society where we find ourselves, because many of us who are sitting here basically comes from poor backgrounds. And the kind of leadership that we were basically looking at is whether when you are finished with your studies, you jump onto this other wagon and you leave the people where you basically come from and you ignore them. So for the group, they decided that whatever knowledge and skill that they're going to acquire while they are studying, they have to go back into the communities where they basically comes from and build from there a new layer of leadership. That's why the emphasis is to go back into primary schools, to go back into high schools and build a new layer of leadership, so that we can have a leadership who's able and capable of studying the context, looking into our history, and be able to pave the way forward in which direction that we should basically go as a country. As one was also saying that, one was also saying in the group that we need new layers of Steve Bikos. We need new layers of Chris Hani. We need new layers of some of all those other great leaders. And where do we start? If we don't create the base, if we don't create the actual base from those who are still young, we're still going to get lost somewhere along the way. We were quite aware that the fact that who controls and who owns the means of production, even to the same part of who makes drugs, who controls it, who distributes it, we were also quite clear about that, because the dumping space is where black people found themselves, the poor.
Njalo abanye bayekile banwenweza bahamba hle kumlilo. When it's my turn, I have to be cautious of time. Awukho umlenze ongenado. Andazi ke noba literal kuthiwa there is no leg without a knee. But in any way, I was going to start because I could see when I look around the room, people are falling asleep. Yeah? Okay. I'm so privileged to present at this time when people are a little bit down and out, because also in Parliament I used to present around this time, and before they know it, and they will say you have 30 minutes, but they will keep me up until 7 o'clock. Them, not me. Okay, I'm going to be very short. You will also bear with me. I'm challenged in terms of the language because I'm a linguist, but one of the languages that I like most is Impondo. Yes, which is the cocktail mixture of isiZulu and isiXhosa. Yes, I am Umrampe. So, okay, our commission we were dealing with popular education as a tool for liberation. And before we even go there, we looked at some of the things that we can use in order for us to understand, to have a deeper understanding of what we meant by popular education, not by merely defining it with what is popular education. And our facilitator came up with a very nice skit of a orange code, but by the way, it's called distributive justice code. I will explain it with less than 1 minute. That we had some oranges, and then we're coming in this place, 2 people. When they see these oranges, there were 20, and then this other guy says, "Can you see these oranges? I'm just going to go and arrange and look for the bag, and for you, you have to put them inside the bag." And then the other one was doing all the manual labor, putting in the oranges inside, but when they have to share the fruits, then the one who was doing the manual labor was only given 1 orange, then end up maybe with 2 oranges, because this guy claimed to having the idea and the how part of how to do it and how to collect it, whereas he was just sitting and folding his arms. Anyway, but what we wanted to show in that orange code, it was about issues of inequality. And because we wanted to brought in some of the elements that we could see when we define, or key elements in defining the popular education. And one of those things is I'm just going to kind of say some few words around it. That the popular education, when you are dealing with popular education, one have to really be clear of the tools of analysis that you are going to use. Also, you have to be aware that you are building the critical consciousness of the people that you are working with, because people, they really have to have a better understanding of the structures in the society, the institutions in the society, and who operates in those institutions. And also, we have to really be mindful of who are the people, who are the owners of the wealth, and who are the people on the ground who are busy doing the hard labor, and they are busy with the production, and how much that they endure from the fruits of that labor. So within that, we were able to see how inequalities manifest itself, and how today we ended up having only 5 families in South Africa that owns the wealth, and most of us just being falling beside the margins and sifumana papanzi ngokuze sonke. But anyway, some of them also ended up joining those that are elite, or those that we call them capitalists, but I don't like labeling people. But also what was much powerful about what we did is the manner how a popular education is able to evoke emotions to people, and how it is driven by the generative themes, and how it can be used in different terrains, not only in the issues of economy, but it can be used also around issues of education, the crisis that we are facing in education in this country. It can be used around health sector. It can be used in issues that are burning in the society, but the societies themselves, or the communities themselves, they have to understand what is this thing that is a thing behind a thing, and what is this thing that is a generative theme to them. It might be a generative theme to you, but it might not be the generative theme to them. And also, we kind of look at the concept of the bare economists, which also we try to define it in different forms, and how also the bare economist settings and thinking fit in the whole issue of the popular education. And one of the things also that we highlighted is the issue of participatory methodologies, and also how it is important for people to dialogue in the process, and how we come in the settings as equals. No one who's superior and will know it all, in the sense that even if you are an academic, or you are just an organic intellectual, but you've got something to contribute in order to transform the status quo. And also, one of the things that was most powerful was about the issue of the popular education. When people embarked on it, has to lead to an action, and it helps people to think out of the box, and for them to own their own action, and they're able to reflect and embark on a reflection praxis, kind of a practice. One of the things also that we ended up wrestling with is to how we can deconstruct the system that we see, and the structures that we already have in the society, and how the education itself perpetuates through persuasion some of the the inequalities that we see in our society. And the role of the universities also came strongly from most of the participants as to, as the students, as the youth of this country, where do we situate ourselves? As the academics, where do we situate ourselves in terms of transforming the status quo, and also in terms of looking at the kind of education now that we are busy with in the institutions of higher learning, whether that does it transform the society or it only serves the interest of the few, which is the hegemony. And also the processes that we embarked in, it helps us also to look at us not only as consumers of knowledge, but also as producers of knowledge. And also kind of looking at our institutions as they continue to franchise the knowledge from the same people where the popular education takes place, and then they fail to defranchise that knowledge, and to defranchise the knowledge and to acknowledge also their sources. And I would say, because my colleagues also will add, it was quite clear that no education is neutral. Both it can be the education that we do now, which is formal education, and also the popular education, but it's not neutral. It shapes one's ideology, it shapes your thinking, and at some point, especially for the formal education, it builds your status. Because as the time progresses, maybe even myself, in 2 to 5 years' time, people will be saying senator. And in conclusion, we also said we have to critically look at the role of education, whether it's to domesticate or is to liberate us. So especially the aim of the popular education is liberation. And we should continue to strive for that liberation and to work and at the same time study and struggle and have to learn from the young, from the old, from the men, from the women, in order for us to also bring all that knowledge and also the research that we get from the books, and we are able to transform the status quo and to transform our society. And I will end by saying knowledge is like a garden. If it's not cultivated, it cannot be harvested. I thank you.
Can we have the group members to make some additions to their commission? Can we have group members to make... Can we then have people who have questions, comments?
I covered.
I've got one question.
There's one, there's two. Can we get a new hand, please? In the absence of a new hand, I'll take yours.
How much will it cost for the University of the Free State to steal you from wherever you're working?
Wow. I'm not stealable, if I can put it that way. Except that you can bring the University of Free State to Bizana, then I can work with you.
Can we have the second hand, please? Oh, you are captured. Okay. Can we have the last one then?
I'm listening, and I'm okay. Gadget 3, I'm listening, and I want to hear the Commission stand on the current education. I don't know. Listening is a skill. Maybe now I'm failing here. I need you to help me here. Because I need to hear, and even the people before, they talked about education, and I feel the concept of education is being tossed around loosely, and I need us to, deliberate more on the education that we have at the moment. What's our stand on it?
Group members.
Thanks. question, there are no questions. You must know that that presentation was good and covered it all. It was one said so.
Can we? No. Let's not have the dialogue. He must be allowed platform, and he is protected like everyone else.
No, Chair. Just to respond to the question by the gentleman on the status of this education that we are getting. The first response is that it does not empower us as young people, and it's very narrow and technical in approach. It makes you to think not broad, and it does not give you a room to critically think and approach ways in the manner in which you as an individual see them. So I'm saying, Chair, I agree that we need to debate about the role of education in our society and how we must approach it to move forward. But to me, as I've said, the education that we are getting is industry driven. We have said that in that commission. I'm doing engineering at North Campus. My wish is to be an engineer and work for Vitawood. Now, if Vitawood decides in 3 years to come, decide to have its own academy, producing its own engineers, and we have NMMU having engineering program producing engineers. Now the VW has got its own academy and it produces its own engineers. If either VW or Daimler Chrysler wants engineers, we are 100 from NMU, they are 20 or 50 from VW Academy. And the space that is available is 10. Which of those engineers students will be prioritized by these companies? Hence I'm saying, Chair, the education that we are receiving in your response is very narrow and it does not reflect the challenges that we are faced with the society. And I have a problem with it. Thanks, Chair.
If I'm allowed to add, Chair. Chair. Oh, thank you very much. I thought that the Chair was chairing the session. Chair, we also believe that the education system is elitist. And we move actually from that point. It's elitist. We can give an example. We have a total number of just below 1 million university students in South Africa. With a population of 50 million people, we have education system that is strengthened neoliberal propaganda. This is our understanding. Strengthens neoliberal propaganda and seeks to wrestle out everything that is challenging neoliberalism. Now, it's not the totality of education. It is selected, carefully selected to strengthen the hand of multinationals, in particular finance capital, but also to strengthen the hands of what is the so-called the market. That is also our understanding, but in finality, the basic understanding is that education and education institutions
are also a function of the type of society we live in. In a class society, there will be a reflection of that class society. Now, as class society in South Africa, like we're having, the education institutions in their totality, they are a reflection of a class society. They cater for the needs of those who own industry and all those who come from working class background. What they are taught in the main is to go and work for those who own industry. Because all of us cannot own industry, and that is a basic fact. Can't be business people, all of us, otherwise there will not be workers in those businesses, and there will not be people to buy from those businesses. Now that is our basic understanding of our education system, and we think that that can be augmented by popular education and to deal with those challenges. Because popular education seems to respond to challenges of communities as opposed to challenges of business. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that comment. The platform is yours.
To add to our colleague's critique of the current system that we have seen as narrow. We were talking a little bit today about how popular education fits with formal education, and whether it is something which is completely separate, whether it's something that is entirely opposed to formal education, and how as academics it kind of fits with it. And we were discussing how, due to its nature as a grassroots and popular movement, it needs to be leading, and the academic and formal education needs to actually listen to that education which is happening within communities and for communities. So I hope that was your answer. Your question being answered yet? Do you want to just say it again? Because I think.
All right. If you listened when the people spoke before you guys spoke, there was a strong quote that my man made there, a comment about education being blind. You understand? So now I felt from there, and you guys discussing the popular education as means to liberation. I feel when we speak about education, I feel we're speaking about it loosely. I have been engaged in formal education over a decade or so. I've been, doing some independent studies, studying a lot of things. But when I was at school, we studied Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, and we studied Macbeth. And I feel what we studied was irrelevant, such that a lot of us failed because it is not something that we were living and something that we had an understanding of. And on top of it, when we moved over Standard 10, the only thing we could do is speak English badly. You understand? We had not acquired any skill that could ensure that we are able to survive, you understand, and be able to be self-reliant, you know what I mean? And as such, when we were talking, we spoke on the education system as it was when we learned more about European cultures and history more than we learned about ourselves, so I feel when I looked on what is being said on popular education as a tool, I feel before we can move any forward, we needed to sit down and view the state of education as it stands now, and is this what we can endorse moving forward, or do we need to break it down, take out some elements, you understand, that are not empowering the people? We'll speak about the main market or the main people, the majority of the people within this sphere, which is South Africa. And of course, it's black people, you understand. we know and we appreciate the fight that was undertaken by the youth in 76 of fighting Bantu education. But we need to understand that what they fought for was to take education from Afrikaans to English. They never fought for the content, you understand? So they fought for the translation, you understand? And I feel it's very poisonous if we're going to leave it like that, because it's a cancer that's going to be carried from one generation to another, because the content remains intact, you understand? And
okay. I think the point is well taken, and I think now we should give them a chance to comment as well.
Okay, I'm not sure whether he was with us or he keep on going out. As he was going out, he asked the question and go out again. Because we talk about understanding the system when you are dealing with popular education. And also I think the concept of education is very broad. And even when you are trying to define it, you have to really establish the dichotomy within the term itself. Because in our understanding, education doesn't start only when you go to school. It starts from home. It starts from the very first day when you start to say mama, dada. So although that education in connotation is not set as a formal education, it's said to be an informal education. But we understand very well, and we talk about the franchisation of the knowledge, which is, it has been taken from the same people, which is the community people that my sister also were talking about there. And we are saying for the popular education, if we had to go to the root of the root of popular education, it will help us to understand the systems, how this system works, the structures, the institutions, how they've been constructed. And in doing that deeper analysis, it will also help us to deconstruct those systems instead of trying to work within those systems or reform them. But it will help us to think out of the box and to think about alternatives instead of saying, and that's why we're challenging the role of the universities, because they are the institutions of higher learning, and they are the institutions that are recognized in terms of providing the formal education. Then when we were talking in the group, we kind of said the universities themselves, they need to do what we call the introspection. Look at the type of education that they are giving to our students, to our sisters, and to the nation. Is it the education that will liberate us, or is it the education for the market? Yes. The type of people that they produce now, which is, as you alluded even from our education in the past, but does it help us to transform the society, or it helps us to perpetuate and to widen the gap between the same people and to widen the classes within the same people? So the popular education will help us to unpack those issues, because that's why we'll be able to name a spade as a spade, because it encompasses all people from all different walks of life, regardless of your level of education, your standard, or your levels of literacy. And in closing, I would like to say, you talk about the curriculum of this country, and we cannot run away. Our education is in crisis and is in shambles. And when we look at the curriculum, where do you start transforming the curriculum? Where do you start to deconstruct those layers and layers of onion that have been started even before my grandmother was born in 1892? But they are still there. And even for our policymakers, when they make policies, when they move from the Bantu education to what was the other education? To before the OBE? Yes, Curriculum 2000, RNSCS, OBE, CAPS, you name them. But what is it? Do they address the issues of language, which Utatu Neville Alexandra were one of the things that he was so strongly kind of wanted them to transform in this country? If we're to teach our children, I'm working with schools in rural areas, when we go to the issues of curriculum, even teachers themselves, because they've been trained in English, but the context where they are going to go and teach is different. They have to go and teach the children in the mother tongue. But then when they come to the classroom, the context is totally different. And you find the resistance from the teachers when you train them, when you say, we have to start teaching maths in isiXhosa. And they'll say, yo, instead of a triangle. You know, so there are attitude problems. And those attitude problems have been there for quite some time. So when you look at the education, we're not supposed to look only on the side of the formal education. We have to look at the education holistically, even from the homes where we are, the role of the parents, the role of learners themselves, the role of us as youth of this country.
Okay, we have one last hand. Aaron, please.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Aaron. We just have to give her a platform. I almost overlooked you.
Thank you. I know now we know the situation, the dire situation we find ourselves in the country in terms of education. We know that education is different from schooling, because schooling is what prepares us for the market. And education as we know it, even though we knew that our grandfathers and grandmothers knew something, they taught us. We had storytelling in our homes. We were learning values through stories. And the only problem is that our stories were not written. So now in a context where we have to learn to read texts, we're struggling in African languages to find texts that have been written. So, but I must say that within this difficult situation and within these challenges that we are facing, we have had some leaders who are showing good leadership, like Neville Alexander, who from working from an ivory tower at UCT, walked down to Langa and other communities where he started reading clubs with us, so that we as youth become leaders of our siblings, so that we show them what it is to experience reading, what it is to enjoy the word, what it is to pen your thoughts. So we have done reading clubs under his leadership. I also remember there was a Zisukano Youth Empowerment in Langa. And we used to have, after the reading club on a Saturday, we used to have meetings of the Zisukano Youth Empowerment. We brought professors from universities to come and teach people in the community. I remember we had a theme of knowing our continent, where we studied things about the Timbuktu manuscripts that were produced from religion and the spread of Christianity and Islam, Pan-Africanism. We had Kwesi Pras coming to teach us in the community. And I think this is what the kind of leadership that we need to see amongst ourselves, saying we don't, after we have achieved, abdicate our communities and live in our own ivory towers. There are organizations as well across the country that are working towards, they've started reading clubs, they've started writing camps for children. For example, our own organization, Nelson Mandela Institute, we have 3 camps in the year around the weekends of like Freedom Day, June 16, Women's Day, or Heritage Day. This is where we teach children, grade 7s to 9s, to write poetry, to write stories, to write autobiographies. And we are training them, not just to be able to write, but to understand our history, where we're coming from. We're teaching them about the great leaders of this country who have taught us, and we are able to build confidence amongst these young ones so that they can become future leaders. And these young children, grade 7s and 9s, go back to their schools and become leaders in their schools. They have one big idea that they have to go back with. So when we are at the camps, they decide what they want to do. They decide whether they want to start homework clubs, whether they want to start reading clubs, whether they want to carry on with their writing camps. We have to plant those ideas in the minds of our young ones so that they go back. So it is important for us to not just talk in these platforms, but to walk the talk, to be there in the communities, to roll up our sleeves and come down from East London, go to Kunu, go to Manduli and Bizan, and work in those rural communities. Thank you.
Over to you.
I think Nabondu and as well as Koli has really said much of what I'm going to say. But I just want to say that we are all aware that our education system is in crisis. And the commission where I was, on the basis of providing leadership, the members of the commission came up with one recommendation by saying that they need to go back and study what are the actual problems within education and come up with an alternative as a recommendation and as a proposal to Uhulumene to say that, but there are other ways that you can take as a way of ensuring that we get out of this particular crisis. But popular education, you can use it evenly as you are at your university, whether you are at high school, you are in the community, because it's more about questioning the status quo. Questioning why is this like this? What happened that this thing must be like this? Who is actually sitting behind this whole thing? But it's not just to question, it's also to seek for alternatives. What can we do to ensure and to make sure that we get out of this particular trouble? So that's the basis of popular education. On the other side also, whilst you are asking all these particular questions, you also raise the level of consciousness of the group of people that you are basically working with to try and find out the actual answers. So that's basically one way. So what it basically means is that the kind of education that we are receiving now, we don't have to go out of here and stand outside and say we're not going to go and attend classes. But what we're saying is that we have to continue to challenge the content, because if the content is not liberatory, we have to challenge it.
Thank you. I think they deserve a round of applause once more. I think the commission has been able to give us the essence of what was at issue for that specific commission. The linkages made between the so-called formal education and popular education as alternative means of trying to solve the quagmire that we find ourselves in this country when it comes to education. I think with those few words, we have now come to the end of the commission reports. I hope that with these commissions, we have been able to reach our objectives as set from the beginning of the conference. And I hope that people will be able to make linkages amongst these various commissions and how they are intertwined and connected. I think with those few words, we now give over to Neville for a few announcements.